Hi, everybody. I hope you're starting to get some good ideas about what you want to do for your SA3 assignment. I've gotten some good questions from you today and put together this presentation that hopefully is going to give you some more guidance and help and maybe answer some questions that you might have. So here's kind of an overview of what all is in this PowerPoint. It's on the long side. I apologize for that, but I wanted to be sure and cover as much as I could, so I really encourage you to stick with it to the end. I'm going to cover just a couple of questions and answers. Then I'm going to talk about helping you find a focus for your paper, organizing your ideas, finding and using your sources, and the process for submitting practice paragraph 3. I just want to remind you a little bit about that. Then I'm also going to do a little bit of forward looking into next week. So, got a really good question today, and it was in light of the fact that I have to use these sources that we've read for my paper on technology. Do I have to agree with the sources? The answer to that question is no. It's not as important for you to agree or disagree as it is that you provide a convincing argument for whatever your views are. So that's going to be the key to a successful paper. If you look at the feedback that I gave you on the You're the Expert submission, you will see that I gave generally I gave feedback about a lot of things, but specifically about where you wrote what you disagreed with and what you agreed with. And I really encouraged you to be sure that you support, if you disagree, really if you agree or disagree, but especially if you disagree, you're going to have to give convincing support. And the reason for that is all of the sources that we've read have very good credentials and provide excellent support for their views. So if you're going to disagree with them, you're going to have to, do an equally good job of, proving and convincing your audience that that your disagreement is valid. You do need to reference at least 2 of the sources in your paper, though, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit later about how you might do that. And you can reference ideas that support your claims, or you can also reference ideas that you're going to disagree with and refute in your paper. Another question I got is whether when you choose the effects that you're going to discuss in this paper, whether you have to discuss all negative effects or all positive effects of the technology. And the answer to that question is no. You don't have to go all one way or all the other. As a matter of fact, when you want to persuade somebody of something, you want to demonstrate that you've thought deeply about it, that you've built a logical argument, and that you're looking at all sides of the issue and considering the opposing point of view. So, this means that it may be likely that your paper is going to deal with both positive and negative effects of this particular type of technology, whichever type of technology you choose to discuss. Another thing that I want to talk to you about just briefly, and we'll go back to it towards the end of this discussion, is that if you're going to have an especially effective argument, you don't just want to say these are the effects. You also want to elaborate a little bit on the ramifications of those effects. So, in other words, and this is probably going to happen in your conclusion paragraph most likely, in light of the benefits or the drawbacks that you present in your paper, what actions might readers need to take moving forward in order to address these effects, to amplify the positive effects and perhaps do away with or lessen the negative effects. Maybe there are new ideas they need to consider. Maybe they need to take a different approach to the technology. I don't know that you want to suggest, you might suggest that they completely cease using the technology, but you might also suggest just some adjustments that they might make. So I want to talk to you a little bit about the language that's on the prompt. What it says is make sure your discussion is limited to one specific type of technology and that it discusses 3 specific effects. And the prompt also says that you may want to center your paper on one particular group or type of people, like children or employees or students or teachers. You could even focus in on people in a particular place or location, in families, for example, or in the classroom, that sort of thing. The most important thing I want to point out is that one of the keys to an effective paper is going to be really narrowing your focus. So let's talk about that a little bit. At the very bottom, what you see on your screen is a focused thesis. But I want to show you first and kind of move towards that. So I want to show you first, kind of move through what does a blurry focus look like, and then I'm going to show you kind of different renditions of the same thesis that move away from being blurry and move towards being focused. So that top sentence, technology impacts people in many ways, that's a very blurry, vague, general thesis. Is it on topic? Yes, it mentions technology and it talks about how it affects people, but it doesn't tell us the kind of technology that's going to be discussed, nor does it name the impacts. So that's really problematic. You don't want a thesis like that. Here's another, kind of edited version. Social media impacts people in many ways. Well, that thesis is a little better because it names, a type of technology or an area of technology by mentioning social media. But you can even be more specific about the type of social media you're going to cover and, the types of impact and the people who are being impacted. That is still pretty vague and general. A step in the right direction is the next sentence that says social media impacts young people in many ways. So now you've got a statement about which type or which group of people this paper is going to focus on. So we're getting better. Even a little better is not just young people, but preteens. That's a more focused age group. Social media impacts preteens in many ways. One of the things you want to keep in mind when you're deciding which group of people to focus on is I want you to think about which groups of people are discussed in the essays that you read in preparation for this paper. So, what groups of people does Nicholas Carr focus on, for example? What groups of people does Alina Tugend focus on? Pay attention to the different subsets of people that these writers focus on because you're going to be pulling information from those sources, and so you probably want to choose a group of people that they address. The focus is getting better here. We don't just have Snapchat listed. We don't just have social media listed. Now we know that this paper is going to focus on Snapchat. So focusing on Snapchat, focusing on preteens, but still not a lot of information about what the effects of Snapchat are on preteens. So that last sentence is much more focused. While Snapchat may be an entertaining way for preteens to connect with friends, it can also lead to greater isolation and undermine their developing social skills. What I want to point out here, let me back up. Let me point out at the bottom. I've just underlined in all of these sentences the focused parts of these sentences. So in the final thesis, there are the three effects. Snapchat can be an entertaining way for preteens to connect with friends, but it can also lead to greater isolation and undermine their developing social skills. So as you can see, that thesis statement is much more focused than the one at the top that just says technology impacts people in many ways. The other thing that I want you to notice is, like I discussed before, the thesis that I have here, the sample thesis, isn't just positive and it isn't just negative. It looks at two sides or both sides or multiple sides of the question about how Snapchat impacts preteens. So what I want to do now is show you how to take your thesis and build your outline. And I think that this won't be too surprising to you. There's the thesis statement. Topic sentence one then is going to say Snapchat offers young people a range of features that make it fun to communicate. So you notice I didn't just take the first part of my thesis and put it word for word into my topic sentence. I varied my wording. Same for topic sentence two. Sometimes, though, using Snapchat can result in preteens feeling lonely or isolated. So instead of just saying isolation, I mentioned loneliness. And then topic sentence three. More importantly, Snapchat may actually decrease preteens' ability to practice healthy social skills. So that's kind of how you take your thesis statement and break it into topic sentences. And then what that means is in the first paragraph, the first body paragraph, I'm going to talk about the fun features that Snapchat has, which I happened to ask my daughter about today. And I don't do Snapchat, but I know that, and she told me about kind of the picture filters or the photo filters that it has and the emoticons. And then also she mentioned that there's some feature called a streak. I know that she has a streak going with a few of her friends so that every single day they send one another a Snapchat, and that's how they kind of stay connected. And you can imagine that that's happening even more right now while we're all sheltering at home. So that entire paragraph that follows topic sentence one is going to talk only about the fun features of Snapchat. And then I'll follow suit in the paragraphs that go with topic sentence two and topic sentence three. What I also want to bring to your attention is that the order or sequence of your argument or your discussion is important, okay? You want to begin with your less compelling ideas. In other words, put them early in your paper, like in your first body paragraph, and then you want to end with your more compelling ideas. Your more compelling ideas are going to go in the second and third body paragraphs. Begin with your more commonly known ideas and end with your lesser known ideas. That's because when you begin with your more commonly known ideas, you're kind of acknowledging the things that people already know, and then you're going to tell your readers things that they don't know, which is going to keep them interested. Whereas if you start with the lesser known ideas and then give the commonly known ones, your reader is thinking, well, I already knew that. I don't even know why that's included here. You also want to begin with your more predictable observations and end with your more surprising or unexpected observations. And one thing that I want to point out is that this ordering or sequencing is important in your topic sentences. In other words, which topic sentence goes first, which topic sentence goes second, which topic sentence goes third. But it also is important within your paragraphs. So when I'm presenting, for example, the types of features that are fun to use in Snapchat, I want to start with the features that people are more familiar with and that are perhaps more predictably fun. And then I want to end my paragraph by discussing the features that maybe fewer people know about, maybe they're newer features, or maybe they're things that initially you might not think of as being really fun, but actually are a really amazing way to stay in touch with your friends. So the order in which you present your ideas, both as you pick out how you're going to organize your topic sentences, but also within your body paragraphs, that sequencing is really important. So here's that outline again, and I want you to notice how the ideas are being presented here, the order in which they're being presented. And you can probably hear my dog growling right now because he's looking out the window and he can see people walking their dog outside. That may happen again. Okay, so here's those topic sentences. Snapchat may decrease preteens' ability to practice healthy social skills. Snapchat offers young people a range of features that make it fun to communicate. Using Snapchat can result in preteens feeling lonely or isolated. So hopefully you can tell just by reading these ideas in this order, those are the ideas from my thesis, but they don't really seem to be in a very logical order. It doesn't really make sense to put the fun features idea in the middle of the paper. That idea needs to go at the beginning or the end, and then the paragraphs about healthy social skills and feelings of loneliness, those are kind of the socio-psychological aspects of the paper that I'm going to discuss. So those need to be grouped together. So that order of ideas doesn't really work. Here's another option. Using Snapchat can result in preteens feeling lonely or isolated. Snapchat may decrease preteens' ability to practice healthy social skills. Snapchat offers young people a range of features that make it fun to communicate. So, why is it that I don't want to end with my observation about the fun features? Well, that goes back to what I said before about ending with your perhaps lesser known information, and then also with your more significant or kind of weightier observations. Is it more important to know that Snapchat can decrease social skills and create loneliness, or is it more important to know that Snapchat is fun? Put the most important idea last. So that's what happens here. It offers fun features. It can lead to loneliness or isolation, and it can decrease preteens' ability to practice healthy social skills. I think that you could probably flip those two, depending on how you wrote and develop those ideas within those paragraphs. But hopefully, you'll see in a minute why I put the third idea as the last idea in my paper. So I want to talk to you a little bit now about how you're going to use the sources for this particular thesis that I've come up with. And by the way, I hope nobody writes their paper about Snapchat. So here are my topic ideas again, okay? Where do I put information from, say, David Galertner or the essay about headphones? Where am I going to put this information? Well, some of those ideas might fit in the introduction. In other words, I might talk about Christina Sepetis's article about headphones and talk about how, headphones seem really cool, they seem really fun, but they also have some downsides, and that similarly, Snapchat, another type of technology, has both a pro and a con. So I could reference ideas from that article in my introduction as a way of kind of introducing my ideas. If I did that, my introductory paragraph would read an awful lot like a summary of Sepetis's article, and then the rest of my paper would be a response to her article. So that would look a lot like the summary response paper that you wrote at the very beginning of the semester. But what if I want to use ideas from my sources in the body of my paper? Well, when I think back about the different essays that I've read, I don't really think Marianne Wolf's article about reading pertains much to this topic. I could come up with something that Nicholas Carr wrote. I'm not sure. I could pull something from his essay. I also could probably pull something from David Galertner's essay because he talks a lot about technology kind of undermining skills. But I think that one of the essays that I would definitely use is Sherry Turkle's essay. And I think that I would reference the point that she makes about how technology decreases empathy. Because that's what I mean by Snapchat decreasing young people's ability to practice healthy social skills. What I mean by that is that when students' social skills or young people's social skills are being decreased, what's happening is they're losing the ability to show empathy. And then I would quote Sherry Turkle. I would quote or paraphrase that idea. I would also give some context about her article and what she discusses before I reference that particular idea. I need to tell my readers who she is, what her credentials are, and give readers just a very brief idea of what she talks about in her paper. And she does talk about phones and communication. And then I'd put the quote or the paraphrase, and then I need to follow up in my paragraph. So I would explain what that empathy piece has to do with healthy social skills. So I might say something like, when people don't demonstrate empathy with or towards one another, they cause other people to feel disconnected. This has ramifications not just for people while they are young, but according to Turkle, possibly for the duration of their lives. So there's the possibility, according to Turkle, that this empathy can continue to decrease into our adult years, which definitely is something that I don't think anybody wants. So that's one way that I might use some of those sources that you've already read in your paper. But the other thing that you want to do is you want to find a source on your own, and you could also find two, as long as you use two of the sources that I provided. You can also, use perhaps two sources that you find from the library. You can find those sources and use those sources to support your other claims. So I might find an article focused specifically on Snapchat and social isolation. And I would do that by using Snapchat in the search when I'm using the Pellissippi Library resources. By the way, hopefully you watched those library tutorials because they give you some really good ideas about how to find some sources and how to pick the sources that you want to use, kind of how to narrow down your selections. It'll be a lot easier for you to find helpful sources if you can go ahead and determine which type of technology you want to focus on, because that's going to help you narrow your search. Now I want to go back to a point that I mentioned before. After I've kind of pointed out the effects of Snapchat, I need to end my paper by kind of explaining why these ideas are important in the first place. We've talked about in the past that the conclusion paragraph can function as kind of like the, well, so what, or the what now piece of the paper. So you might think of it this way. In other words, in light of the benefits and or drawbacks that you present in your paper, what actions do you think your readers might need to take to lessen or amplify these effects? Do they need to consider new ideas? Do they need to take different approaches moving forward? So that's what you want to do in your conclusion paragraph. So there's my thesis again. And then here's my reiterated thesis, which is going to be the first sentence of my conclusion paragraph. And you'll notice my reiterated thesis touches on what I said in my thesis statement, but uses different language and kind of pushes forward as well. So my reiterated thesis says, because the fun aspects of Snapchat cannot be separated from the more harmful ones, so there's where I talk about the positives, the entertaining part of Snapchat, and then also the kind of damage that it can do to students regarding their social skills. So because the fun aspects can't be separated from the more harmful ones, some may want to rethink how, when, and how often to allow preteens to use Snapchat. And then I might go on and say preteens or parents, or I might talk about preteens and then talk about parents, or vice versa. They can consider, and then I might list some different actions that they might take. How might they use Snapchat differently? How might they think about Snapchat differently? Or how might they just kind of approach the whole idea of Snapchat and social media in general? Maybe they could even consider offsetting the ways that Snapchat kind of undermines social isolation and a decrease in empathy by actively finding other ways to increase and strengthen empathy in light of the fact that probably social media and applications like Snapchat really aren't going anywhere. That's another place that I could use some research. And Sherry Turkle mentions the fact, and so does, I want to say, Nicholas Carr, if I'm not mistaken. Both of those writers talk about how even though technology can have negative effects, the human brain is plastic and malleable, and we can learn new habits so we don't have to be stuck in this loss of empathy. So I could reference a source in my conclusion paragraph as well. I want to end by kind of making, just some kind of prediction of a positive outcome. And it says positive, positive. It needs to be really, really positive. No, just you might say if parents or preteens consider and implement some of these suggestions, they're likely to see that Snapchat doesn't have to have such negative effects. So just some kind of positive outcome, but be really careful not to overgeneralize or don't promise more than what can actually occur when you make that prediction. One thing I also want to caution you against, I really discourage you from using the word should or ought. Um, so don't tell people, I don't think it's a good idea to tell people what they shouldn't do. Um, and I'm seeing some of that as I'm grading your essay too. It's a really good idea to make suggestions about possibilities, but you don't want to talk directly to your readers. And you also want to present your ideas as possibilities, not as kind of commands, because that's being respectful that the readers also have their own ideas and their own thoughts. So I really discourage you from using the word should. Speaking of things to avoid, here are some other things that it would be good to avoid in this paper. It's not a good idea to announce in advance what you're about to say or what you think. So instead of saying, I disagreed or I agreed with Tujend when she says, or I disagreed, present tense, with Tujend when she says, you don't need to pronounce that. Instead, just say what you agree with. Basically, what I did is just kind of flip the sentence and take out the first person. Tujend is incorrect when she claims. So there, I'm disagreeing with Tujend, but I'm not announcing that I'm about to disagree with Tujend. Hopefully you can see the difference there. Here's another thing to avoid. Please be careful that you represent the ideas in your sources accurately. You don't want to misrepresent what your sources say because that undermines your credibility as a writer and as a voice on this topic. The essays that we read have some sophisticated data. They have some sophisticated ideas and some sophisticated kind of philosophies and ideologies. Make sure you understand them if you're going to use them in your papers so that you can use them accurately. Oh, let me say one other thing about this. One of the reasons that I'm having you take a reading quiz about these essays, and one of the reasons that I had you do the You're the Expert presentations, is because I wanted to give you some activities that would help you really dive into these essays and understand them well. So before you take that quiz, I encourage you to go back and look through those essays, probably because I want you to do well on the quiz, but also because I want you to look back at those articles and make sure you understand what they have to say. You might also find some specific details that you can plug into your paper. But be careful not to misrepresent those ideas. The other thing you want to be careful about is putting information in your paper from one of those articles that the author is citing from another source. So, for example, Alina Tujend, I think, cites a study of employees in her essay. Well, when you talk about what that study shows, you need to make sure that you acknowledge that Tujend is describing a study when you write about it. So don't put the study's words into the author's mouth without letting your reader know in your signal phrase and in your introductory information that the author is quoting or referencing a source. Also, make sure that you introduce your sources. I know that you have read all of these articles, but remember, the audience that you're writing to has not read these articles. You're writing to kind of the more general Pellissippi public, faculty, staff, students. You can even consider this an essay that would go out to the general public, beyond just Pellissippi State. These people have probably never heard of Marianne Wolf or Sherry Turkle or Nicholas Carr. So when you drop their ideas or integrate their ideas into your paper, you need to make sure to let your audience know who these people are, what these articles are about, and what they're talking about in the article when they include the information that you quote. Do a really good job on introducing your sources in this paper and the ideas from your sources. Similarly, make sure that after you include the idea from your source, don't assume that your reader understands why that idea is important or how it relates to your topic idea. Follow up a reference to your source with an explanation of why that information relates to what you're trying to say. Connect it back to your ideas. Here's another thing that I want you to be careful to avoid. It's really tempting when you're doing your research to find an article and say, hey, I found my article, and be done with it. I really encourage you as you're doing your research to see if you can find, 3, 4, or 5 articles that look like possibilities. There's a feature when you are finding those sources that you can email them to yourself, or you can go ahead and download them to your device. But get yourself a little collection of sources that can work, because it might be as you continue to write this paper that you find that the source that there he goes. You might find that the source that you thought was going to work really well is actually not the best source. And you want to be sure that the information you include from your sources is really relevant, really helpful, really convincing support. One more thing. You can hear my dog. One more thing. When you are documenting your digital sources, you do not need paragraph numbers in a citation. I've seen a little bit of that on your You're the Expert presentations, and I double checked on Purdue OWL, which has the 8th edition of MLA guidelines there, and paragraph numbers are not needed. Speaking of research, hopefully you're working on your research. If you haven't, or if you started and you've kind of stalled out, even though the campus is closed, I want to remind you that we are all working and we are all available. I double checked the website today, and it shows that the librarians are still able to help you. You can email them, you can chat, you can text, and I would bet that if you called the campus number and asked to talk to a librarian, I'd be really surprised if you couldn't get somebody on the phone. So you could try dialing that number that's on the library's webpage, but you can also email, chat, and text. I went ahead and cut and pasted their hours, what's posted on the website right now, 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and then Friday 8 to 6. They're open Saturdays, and in the past, our library has not been open on Sundays, but currently it is open on Sundays. So that gives you even more opportunities to reach out to the librarians and get them to help you with your research. If you have any trouble getting a hold of them, you might double check the web page. Just go to the Pellissippi web page and use the search engine, the search tool, type in library, and their web page should pop up. Now, you've done your research, you have written your thesis statement, you have come up with your topic sentences, you've written a body paragraph, you've created your works cited list. What are you going to turn in for practice paragraph 3? Let's review. First of all, you're going to turn in a correctly formatted Word document, and on that document will be a heading as usual and a title. Make it catchy. Put your thesis statement, and it really helps me if you label it. So just go ahead and put the words thesis statement and underline that part, and then type your thesis. Then the topic sentences for each of your body paragraphs. And you can label those too. So like topic sentence for body paragraph 1, topic sentence for body paragraph 2, etc. Even though you're underlining and labeling these things, do go ahead and double space throughout. And then you've got your body paragraph. It doesn't matter to me which body paragraph you include, but whichever one you put in this paper, you need to let me know which body paragraph it is. Is it going to be your first, your second, or your third? The other thing that you want to keep in mind is that your body paragraph needs to have at least one reference to one of your sources. Your works cited page needs to include works cited entries for the source, all of the sources that you're going to use in this paper. So you're going to have chosen the ones that I provided, and you're also going to list the source or sources that you found doing your own research. So if you haven't gotten started, it's time to get started. One other thing. When you're looking at the sample entries for your works cited entries, if the sample entry requires you to include a URL, then I do not need a copy of that source. But if the works cited entry does not require you to include a URL, then I need for you to upload that source as a second file in the assignment Dropbox. And just a friendly reminder, I know some of you like to be overachievers. You like to send me more than what is called for on the practice paragraph submission instructions. I really want to discourage you from doing that. Don't be an overachiever. Okay, resist the temptation to do more or to turn in more than what the practice paragraph 3 instructions call for. Please submit only what is listed on the assignment. In closing, practice paragraph 3 is due by this Saturday at midnight. You can turn it in before then. I'll put the assignment Dropbox up, but I need it by Saturday at midnight. Also, what you turn in is not a draft. It is the final version of practice paragraph 3 that I'm going to grade and evaluate. Usually we have those writer workshops. We can't really do that right now with this online delivery. So if you need help, remember, I'm here. You can email me. You can ask for a time to talk by phone. And I'll be glad to do that. I'll even set up, one of these Zoom sessions if we need to do that, okay? I'm here to help you, so don't forget that. And I have been answering emails off and on and helping people with assignments, so I'm happy to do that. So you turn in practice paragraph 3 by Saturday at midnight. Well, you've got between Saturday and Tuesday, and here's what you need to do. Keep working on the other parts of Essay 3. Work on your introductory paragraph. Work on your conclusion. Work on the other body paragraphs. Keep working on the rest of it. Get a draft churned out. You'll be so glad that you did. It's also not a bad idea to treat each little section of this paper as kind of a separate writing assignment. You can look back at this video if you want to and kind of stop it at the different parts where I'm talking about the different sections of the paper and just write out that section. But keep working on the rest of Essay 3. The other thing that I would really encourage you to do is to look back at the comments that I've made on your previous papers. I hope to have your graded Essay 2 to you by either Thursday night or Friday. So you can look at those grades and that'll give you an idea of where you stand in the class and also what you need to keep thinking about moving forward. Keep looking at those comments. Keep an eye out for those favorite mistakes. When you look back at Essay 1 and Essay 2 and those practice paragraphs, what are the grammatical abbreviations, those grammar abbreviations that you see? What you want to do is avoid those in the future. And I want to let you know about a tool that I've added to Brightspace that can help you with that. And I'm going to show it to you at the end of this video. I have added on Brightspace a link to a website that has interactive grammar exercises. So if you can identify your favorite mistake, let's say you see a lot of pronoun agreement errors or agreement errors, well, identify that type of error, then look in your handbook or go to this interactive website. It's got kind of just the general teaching point about what pronoun agreement problems are and how to correct them. Then do some of the practice exercises that are on this website, and then go back to your paper. You can even look at some of your old papers and see if you can find where those errors happen and correct them. Then, of course, look at your practice paragraph 3 and your essay 3 and start pretending like each of the sentences in those essays is a grammar exercise and start avoiding those errors on your papers. I know this is a lot of work. I know it's very different that we're not meeting in person, but I want you to know I have confidence in you, and I just want you to keep going. I want you to keep turning in your papers, keep coming back to Brightspace, just keep doing things one step at a time. Now, what I'm closing with right here is I want to show you, let's see. I want to show you on Brightspace how you can get to those interactive exercises. So here's our home page. And if you go to content, scroll down where it says help with grammar, right there. When you click on that, what you'll see is this link to these interactive grammar exercises. And I wrote you kind of a description of how to use it there. But here's what happens when you click on that link. It takes you to this web page. And when you scroll down the web page, first at the top, this shows you the different types of errors that it teaches on. So remember I mentioned pronoun agreement. Well, let's say I want to learn about pronoun agreement. I click on pronoun agreement. There is the section on pronoun agreement. Here is a bunch of interactive exercises. And gosh, there's 5. And then there's even more right here. I'm not sure what that hot potato software is. But when I go to these interactive exercises, I just look at this sentence. Nobody knows that eating chocolate broccoli muffins is a good way to provide their bodies with vitamin C. Their bodies, there is the pronoun. Okay, I have to figure out what the correct answer is. It says in the space provided, fix the underlined error. So I'm going to type in what I think the answer is. What if I get it wrong in front of you? That'd be really embarrassing. Nobody knows that eating chocolate broccoli muffins is a good way to provide, is it his or her? Bodies, let's see. Look up here, it says your answer is correct. Now what if I put just the word bodies? What if I get it wrong? I think that's wrong. Or what if I say, I give up? It tells me what the answer is up here, and then it gives me an explanation. So that's just a little idea. Oh, and look at the name of their website, chompchomp.com. Well, that's because it's teaching you grammar in small bites that you can chomp on. So you're welcome for that. Okay, that's enough for now. But again, I'm here to help. I miss you, and I very much look forward to reading your next papers. All right, take care. Bye, everybody.